Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of SPOLITICS Live. Got a lot to get to off a very exciting NFL weekend. I appreciate you folks already jumping in the comment section and waiting on me to do this in general. Always appreciate the support. And just as I say at the top of every episode of SPOLITICS Live, if you can show love, don't forget to click subscribe to this YouTube page so you can continue to get more content like this, continue to see the ins and outs of different things going on with me professionally, continue to hear me chime in on topics, and obviously join you in community for moments like this. Obviously, the story of the NFL weekend, or one of the biggest stories of the NFL weekend. I'm not going to disrespect the Cowboy fans out there and act like y'all didn't just beat the Eagles. Obviously, that was a big story. But one of the biggest stories of this NFL weekend was Shedeur Sanders, who he had his first NFL start against the Raiders. He throws for 200 yards, or a little rather over 200 yards, and throws for a touchdown, throws an interception. But most importantly, he is the first Cleveland quarterback, as you see that stat right there, to win his first start since 1995. Which lets you know already the type of quarterback development that goes on in Cleveland, which is to say not very much. I heard a stat this morning on, I think it was Get Up, where on ESPN's Get Up, I think they said that Kevin Stefanski himself has been through like 12 quarterbacks. I'm like, are you serious? So when people have talked about this widespread conspiracy about Shedeur, which you all know I don't really buy into. It's like he went to Cleveland. It's not like he went somewhere that has some kind of history, even in the last 30 years, that has a history of development quarterbacks. So it's like he went to, when it comes to quarterback development, like one of the most incompetent franchises in the NFL. And so nevertheless, Shedeur being able to start, I'm going to go back to something that I said when I addressed Shedeur getting some time the previous week in that game. And he didn't look great, but he wasn't supposed to look great because he didn't have any first team reps. He hadn't been, he was obviously thrown into the fire. So trying to make some kind of evaluation about his potential as an NFL quarterback would have been a huge mistake. So I'm going to play for you guys what I said leading into this week, because I feel like I hit the nail on the head. And this week is really important because all those things that forever ways you think he wasn't developed, all those things will be on the table this week. Because come Sunday, when he has to start, it's Kevin Stefanski's job to get Shedeur ready. And that means a game plan design for him. That means reps with the first team. That means he gets the entire week. And who knows how long Dillon Gabriel will be in the concussion protocol. So it may be even longer for all we know. He gets the entire week where the coaching staff, the players, the game plan is solely focused on him. So now is his opportunity to show people what he can possibly do or the potential that he has. Again, I don't want to. That's what I said leading into this. I said, this is going to be the week where you're going to see, does he have flashes? Is this something worth exploring? And I don't think there's any question after seeing Shedeur play. I don't think that is any question that the Browns should start him, not just this week against the 49ers, because I don't know if you guys have seen that announcement. He will start this week against the 49ers. I think Shedeur Sanders needs to start the rest of the season. Listen, I never was in the camp that Dillon Gabriel is a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. Quite frankly, when Cleveland reached and took him in, I think, the third round, I was surprised. I was like, maybe they're seeing something that I didn't see from him in college. And they picked him over Shedeur. I thought, not great, but at least they did choose Shedeur overall, choosing him in the fifth round. There was nothing that Dillon Gabriel showed that led you to believe that in any way that he could be Cleveland's quarterback of the future. I realize he's got a pretty limited resume that he's dealing with, but you want to see something. You want to see some kind of flash. And I think that touchdown pass that Shedeur Sanders had and just his control of the game, period, you saw the flashes. Like, this is something that is worth exploring. Like Cleveland has to figure out what they have at this position, because next year, I believe the Browns have 2 first-round picks. The thinking going into next year that unless Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel becomes, like a Kirk Cousins, a late round pick that wound up being a starter, like unless they become that guy, Cleveland is going to be looking for a quarterback again next year, which means once again, Shedeur has a enormous opportunity ahead of him, because what would be the reason for Cleveland to go back to Dylan Gabriel? They don't really have a reason, right? There's nothing that Dylan Gabriel showed you that Kevin Stefanski can say, you know what, because I saw that, we're going to roll with this guy. And I also think as a coach, if you're any kind of good coach, you need to be able to read the room. That's part of your job. And Kevin Stefanski, seeing how the players, everybody probably by now has seen Myles Garrett's reaction to Shedeur throwing that touchdown. The players have responded. The fans have responded. They want to see what this guy can be. Even Donald Trump has responded, for whatever that's worth. So yeah, like it doesn't make any sense to go back to Dylan Gabriel when all the momentum is with Shedeur Sanders. Now, if the wheels come off and, maybe he is showing, hey, this moment might be too big. Okay, maybe you think about it then. But I think for the rest of the season, Shedeur has earned the right to start. Y'all tell me what y'all think, because I see I see a lot of you all reacting, because here's the thing, because of my previous positions, and this is where I feel like we need to get better at not just listening, but understanding nuance. Because I'm just like, I don't really think it's some orchestrated campaign to not, to not see Shedeur play. I think he went to a very incompetent organization. I think a lot of the experts were wrong in their assessment of him, of thinking he's like a lock first-round pick. So everybody had it in their mind that Shedeur Sanders is going to be a first-round pick. He's going to be the first quarterback off the board. And when he wasn't, everybody started tripping, as if these same experts every year are wrong about somebody, as if we haven't seen them wildly miss on quarterbacks before. But not being taken in the first round, where it matters is the money, because obviously as a first rounder, you get more money. But it doesn't, whether you're taking first round, third round, fifth round, it's not a predictive of what your NFL career would be. I thought that he was probably like a third round pick. I was really surprised when he didn't go third, fourth round. And that doesn't mean that I didn't see Shedeur Sanders as a potential starter in this league. I was like, oh, no, I could definitely see him starting. But he also is somebody that I felt like you didn't have to jump out there in the first round to get, that you could get him as a value pick and get great value, tremendous value. And for that, I got called a lot of names. And what I'm struggling to understand is, why are the opinions about this young man so extreme? Extreme. It's like already this. Let me show y'all what was the very first comment in this chat. That was the first comment. I don't even know who this is. I get called out of my name over. We're talking about sports, people. We're not talking about anything that is. We're not talking about anything so important that I need to be called that. Like, why? Because we don't agree about a sports opinion? Like. And then, any level of small critique, minimal critique, is I get called a sellout and whitewashed and a bootlicker and a biscuit eater and all these other things. It's like, why does Shedeur drive such emotion? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I'm like, I don't get this, people. I mean, I get it, because I do understand that Black people are having an entirely different conversation and an entirely different experience around Shedeur Sanders than white people are. This is very much a two Americas type of thing going. We have adopted Shedeur Sanders as our nephew, as the community nephew. We're so overly protective of him that I understand that protection, because it's generally the type of protection that we know that we rarely get. So sometimes we have to put our own protective bubble around certain people in our community. I fully understand that. But we got to stop doing that thing where we immediately hit the sellout button over an opinion you don't agree with. We got to stop doing that. With some people, there's a track record there where you can say, hey, it's not just about this opinion. It's about the fact that you said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is the 8th thing. And that's why I consider you to be a sellout, or questioning your blackness, questioning your affection for the community. I understand that. There is nothing in my track record that would lead anybody to believe that I'm that person. So continuing to engage in this toxic dialogue around Shedeur Sanders is very baffling to me, especially when I haven't said that he couldn't be an NFL starter. I've never dismissed his talent as a player. So why am I getting this energy? All I said was, like, I think he went to a pretty incompetent organization, and what you see is that incompetence on display. And I hope that Shedeur has an amazing NFL career. I have no reason. I don't know this kid enough to root against him. Why would I be rooting against Shedeur Sanders? What would be in it for me to do that? Why? I don't know him. I mean, I know his father a little bit. Our paths have crossed here and there, but like, I have no reason to roll out of bed and say, you know what's number 1 on my list today is hating Shedeur Sanders. Like, what? Like, come on, man. Y'all tripping. Nevertheless, getting back to him now being on this pathway of starting, I thought the way that he handled his post game was exceptional. Here is, because the one thing he doesn't lack is confidence. And I think at his position, I think the quarterback has to carry a natural and higher level of confidence, maybe than any other position on the field, because you're a leader. People are looking to you for direction, for stabilizing things. Like, they're looking to you for a lot, even if you're a rookie. And so I love this answer that he gave this young lady while he was on the field in postgame.
Hope to show against this Raiders defense, your teammates, yourself, and these Browns fans with their play today?
I'm who they've been looking for. Appreciate it.
Now, that was before the game. Sorry, I thought it was after the game, but that was before the game. He's like, I'm going to show them that's what I've been looking for. That's exactly the type of answer that you want from a starting quarterback, somebody who embraces the pressure, somebody who's not looking at this all scared, but looking at it as, I have an opportunity not only for us to win, I have an opportunity to do the funniest thing in the world, which is make a lot of people, Kevin Stefanski included, look stupid. Here's some other comments that he had after the game.
Not everybody's not in the best situation, but it's no excuse. You got to go out there and perform. Like, there's no choice, there's no question. Nobody cares if this was 1 week of prep. Who cares? So a lot of people want to see me fail, and that ain't going to happen.
Love it. Love it. A lot of people want to see me fail. It ain't going to happen. Gotta like it if you're... Look, I feel so sorry for Browns fans. They just thirsty. They just want something that looked like a winner. They just don't want to be humiliated out there every week. And I know for sure they don't want to go down as possibly having the best defensive player of this generation in Myles Garrett and just completely wasting his time. Now, don't get me wrong. He chose to resign there. And a lot of people are like, are you sure, bro? And he made it seem as if he was thinking about perhaps moving on. And he wound up resigning and staying in Cleveland. But it would be a damn shame if they wasted Myles Garrett's time, because that dude is him. And you only get one of those every so often. And so the Browns better take advantage. Here's something else I like from Shedeur from after the game.
Learned a lot. Mentally, I feel like I'm able to understand more. I feel like I'm able to. And the thing was, I was always great at understanding perspectives and stuff, because you got to really take a deep dive at how we grew up. Like, when we grew up, my dad had us in a 30,000 square foot home. Then after that, he took us to go play ball in the inner city. After that, we transferred and he moved us across town because he wanted us to get that dog in us, to have that mentality, to have that it factor in us. So then we went to charter schools. And I don't know if you're familiar with charter schools, and it's not the best, but you got a lot of different people from different situations that you got to be able to adapt to. So that's where all those core different things of being able to relate, being able to understand. But now, since I went through everything the past 6 months, it led me to a whole different understanding, you know, and it led me in my own experience with God, with having faith, you know, when nobody else can help you in your situation, you know, but God, you know. So that's why I'm truly thankful and I'm truly happy. And this is the first time I was never had stress, you know. I did the work. I did everything I can in my power I was able to do. So the rest was left up to him.
I like it. I like it. And given how long Shedeur Sanders has been in the media spotlight, I would expect him to win the press conference because he's a very media savvy person. And coming up the way that he did, he has to be. He's used to pressure. He's used to scrutiny. And you want to see somebody respond in the way that he's responding with that pressure and with that scrutiny. When you grow up as a son of a Hall of Famer like Deion Sanders, who will definitely remind you of how good he is at every opportunity, you got to be built a little bit differently. And so I always thought that his makeup was, as long as the physical ability was there, as long as he got the experience, continued to improve with his makeup, he can do something. So I'm happy for Browns fan that they have a glimmer of hope on this season. You know, as I said earlier, I think it's no question that he should be the starter the rest of the season. Okay, this is from, you know what I'm saying. Let me help you out, Jemele. Shedeur Sanders is the Blacks' Magic Johnson and the haters are the Larry Bird. That's why the Blacks ride for Shedeur. Well, now we've turned it into a race war. Okay, congratulations. No, I know exactly why we ride for him so hard. It's a number of reasons. It's a complicated conversation. A lot of us love the fact that you have Deion Sanders, prominent, and not just him being a Hall of Famer, but the fact that he's an active, involved father. And there are such limited representation of great Black fatherhood that are out there. That's not to say there are not great Black fathers, but seeing that is something different. Because a lot of times, and we see this across sports, is if an athlete is good, and if they're a Black athlete, I'm talking about specifically, if a Black athlete is good, we'll hear all the same usual stories about mama. Everything will be focused on mama. And this is even the case with players who come from strong, you know, two-parent homes. It's like focus is always on mom, not on dad. And Deion Sanders is giving people who maybe don't see a lot of positive Black fathers, that he's giving them a different look. Same thing with LeBron. That's why that LeBron-Bronny conversation was so emotional for a lot of us, because you have that representation there. It was the same with LeVar Ball. You saw the protective force field being put around the Ball family because of LeVar, and having that representation, active, involved, advocating Black fathers. And we've seen white fathers do this. And we also see there's a difference in criticism to how that's handled versus how it can be with some of us. So I understand why there's this collective community effort to make sure that we uplift Shedeur and Deion and the Sanders family because of what that representation means. And then you add on top of that this is also Black wealth. So people are seeing a different picture of that. You have Black fatherhood, Black wealth, and then you have confidence. And we know that confidence displayed by Black people is often misinterpreted, purposely misinterpreted as arrogance, as defiance. And we know that the other side is not under the same scrutiny. You know, like many people have mentioned the confidence oozing out of Jackson Dart, which I love, who the Giants chose, and it looks like they got their guy. But Jackson Dart's confidence is considered to be a positive. It's considered to be a good thing. What you don't hear is people going on long diatribes like the one Rex Ryan has done a couple of times about Shedeur Sanders, assessing his character and becoming a body language expert. Meanwhile, Jackson Dart, he got all the flash. He says all the confident things, and everybody thinks that this is an indication of good character and of somebody who's ready to be in the limelight in New York City as, one of the most glamorous positions in sports, to be starting quarterback for the New York Giants. And so he doing the TikTok dances and he got the chains and all that, and it's all welcome. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but when it's Black athletes, those kinds of behaviors are viewed and scrutinized and criticized much differently. And we know that. And so I understand too that the emotional investment by the Black community in Shedeur is a response to how we see Black men with his confidence treated in real life and treated when it comes to sports. So, yeah, I understand those elements. But even within that community conversation that we're having, we have to, realize that there is room for critique. If Shedeur has a bad game, we need to be able to say that without our entire existence as a Black person being called into question. Or if we say, probably shouldn't have made that throw. Or if he is exhibiting some body language that's like, maybe that wasn't the time. And I'm not saying that he's done these things, but I'm just giving a for instance. And this is, I understand what that is all rooted in. But this is where I get a little lost. The NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his dad that nobody is bigger than the program. But regardless, everyone supports Shedeur, white and Black. I don't know if everybody supports Shedeur. And this isn't to say that white people are the ones that don't support Shedeur. It's some Black people that I know that don't support Shedeur. They just find everything to be too much. Or they just don't think he's as good as advertised. So like, you being white and supporting Shedeur is not necessarily surprising, nor is it anomaly. But I don't think it's any question that he's one of the most polarizing athletes. And really polarizing through no fault of his own. Yes, his father gave him advantages. Yeah, you're going to get some advantages when your dad has been the main coach that you've had your entire life. And that isn't to suggest he didn't deserve to start or hasn't deserved some of the accolades that he's received. But his father definitely put him in a position where he could showcase what he could do. And he was able to do that well enough to where now he is an NFL starter. And trust me, the NFL is relentless. If Shedeur wasn't good, believe me, ain't nobody trying to have him stick around and play quarterback because of who his daddy is. Like, nobody has that kind of time. People want to stay employed. So he's not getting any charity in the NFL. Make no mistake about it. And really, and while I wouldn't necessarily say this is a starter from the bottom, now we hear type of situation, I would say that we need to appreciate the journey that he was on. In a way, and you all can call me crazy in the chat if you want to, in a way, I think he should be grateful this was the start of his NFL career. And the reason why I say that is because if Shedeur goes from being a 5th round pick at quarterback to a legitimate every week NFL starter, that says more about his character, his resilience, his resolve. I think it says all the right things about him, because there's plenty of ways in which this could have gone badly. They've always tried to paint Shedeur Sanders as somebody who is entitled. And maybe, all young people are entitled. So like, I don't know that he's any more entitled than any other young person that age. Every young person thinks they know everything and older people don't know shit. That is not new. All right. But what I will say though, is there could have easily been a scenario in which Shedeur Sanders completely crashed out after he was chosen in the 5th round. There's a lot of people in his position, with his background, with his money, who would have completely tanked their NFL opportunity because their ego wouldn't have allowed them to not humble themselves by words, but humble themselves by realizing, like, I got work ahead of me. He could have easily been that guy and blown the opportunity with the Browns, but he wasn't. And when you're a 5th round pick, just making the roster is a win. So once he made the roster and we see what happened, how the Browns quarterback situation has unfolded, it says a lot about him. And even though some of this was him just winning the war by attrition, Flacco's not there. The reality is Kenny Pickett has more experience than him, and they traded Kenny Pickett, which says a lot about, they at least saw something. Maybe they weren't convinced that Shedeur was a starter, that he was somebody that they can just turn the reins over. Maybe they didn't know that, but they saw something. They saw more in him than they saw Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett done been in this league. So with that being said, you can tell by the way Shedeur talks that he sees this more as an opportunity and not a setback. And that's why he responded the way that he did after the game. Because for him, if you come in the NFL this way, I think it speaks very highly of who he is. And if I were him, I would embrace and want that journey. I would want to get it out the mud. And listen, I'm not saying that when it came to, like if he was taken in the 1st round, he should like give that back or be like, no, I want to go later. No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that I think there's so much upside in him starting his NFL career that way. All right, I'm gonna get to some of the comments that you guys have right here so I can respond to some of those. All right, let's see this one. This is from Reginald. All right, he is a solid mentality. He has the it factor. I'm a Steelers fan. I wish we would have got him. They saw this guy got the it factor. I agree. He does have an it factor about him. What pisses me off, this is from Sandra Haynes. What pisses off, the old guard in the NFL and a Nepo kid like Rex Ryan is that he is a Black rich kid who doesn't get into trouble, is God-fearing, and is unapologetic about who he is. I mean, I think suffice it to say, I think that there are people in media when they discuss him who are factoring in those things, who just don't like that he's, to use your word, that he's unapologetic about it. He's unapologetic about the fact, like, yes, he was in college making money. Yes, he had endorsements. Yes, he has the limelight. Like, some people resent that. And so I think sometimes in the discussions of Shedeur, that heavily comes across. All right. And thank you for your support. All right. We got Riri Lottie 57. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Agree with everything you said. And I'm a heavy number 12 supporter. All right, here's another one. He is an okay quarterback, nowhere near the hype he and his dad created around him. He needed to be humbled. Not sure he has been, though. What does it mean when you say somebody needs to be humbled? Like, so that's the other part that always makes conversations about Shedeur Sanders tricky, is generally speaking, and I hope people out there understand this, and I don't know if the person who made that comment is white or Black. I don't know what their race is. I just know this. Let's see. Let me flash that up again. That's Thomas Eliason. There is a general obsession that people have with humbling Black people, Black women, Black men. It's like that's something that we face. Other people are allowed to show their confidence in full force, but not us. For some reason, when we're confident, when we're secure, when we are not willing to play the humble role, meaning we're going to remind you of exactly how good we are, somehow that becomes offensive to people. So that's a very triggering thing for us. Like, what was the phrase that we were saying all the time a few years ago? I'm tired of being humble. Yeah, because sometimes we get tired of that. We get tired of having to minimize and reduce ourselves to make other people comfortable. And so if you're one of those people that you need to look at Black people and they need to be in service of, or they need to be humbled, you might want to do some more. You might need to go see that lady. And you know who I mean by that lady. All right, here's another one. Puzzled, this is from Jermaine White. Puzzled as a mug. That's like my phrase, as a mug, then a mug. Puzzled as a mug as to why the Raiders and Steelers didn't draft him. Brady used to mentor the kid. Geno is garbage. Now, let's talk about the Raiders just real fast. the Raiders in a bad way. They fired Chip Kelly. And by the way, and I say this as respectfully as I can. Can y'all stop giving Chip Kelly jobs? When was the last time Chip Kelly has been good at his job? And I mean that as respectfully as I possibly can. All right? Respectfully as I possibly can. The days of Chip Kelly being considered the foremost offensive genius ever created, those days are over. Stop hiring that guy. It's not working out. It is not working out. All right? The Raiders are in need of literally everything. And this Pete Carroll experiment is not going well. I think Pete Carroll is a really good coach. And when it was his heyday, he was great. But that time has passed. Pete Carroll, I mean, he's in his 70s and he's coaching. And listen, if he had more talent, I don't think the Raiders are in a position talent-wise where they can be coached up into something greater. I think what they have is what they have. And right now, it kind of does feel like they in tank mode. And so because of that, they just in a bad way. And I'm not going to, by the way, I'm not of the opinion, because some people have done this, of trying to discredit Shedeur's performance because it was against the Raiders. Hence, and because it was the Raiders, by the way, I was very aware of like what a good opportunity that was for him. Here you have a team that has no identity, that looks like, you know, they'll be picking about where they did this past year in the NFL draft. But it's still hard to win in the NFL. Those are still professionals on the other side. I think San Francisco will obviously be a bigger test, even though my 49ers, look, we playing with house money right now. Everybody's hurt. We're missing our best defensive players, two of them, you know, Bosa, Fred Warner. We got this Brandon Ayuk situation that has exploded in our face. We're just now getting Brock Purdy back, who missed multiple games with the turf toe injury. That's probably going to be something that's lingering the rest of the season. Nevertheless, we got a winning record. We're playing with house money. The Rams are probably the best team in our division. So at any rate, I say all that to say that this is going to be a better test for him. And I think it would probably help all parties involved if they just name Shedeur the starter for the rest of the season. That gives the coaches, they know exactly what they're working with. Shedeur knows exactly what to expect. So you're putting your team in the best position to win. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. All right, here's this. And they complain about blacks not acting like good fathers, yet they seem to want to punish Deion for being part of his life now. Too much drama excuse. You know, we heard that a lot during the NFL draft, is that people saying that one of the reasons maybe teams, and this was just scuttlebutt, it was never proven per se, is that one of the reasons teams stayed away from Shedeur is because they didn't want the shadow of Deion hanging over them, in the sense of like, perhaps if you're a coach, you draft Shedeur, maybe the product on the field isn't as good as you thought, team's not as successful, then automatically they're looking at the quarterback's father to replace you. I don't know how much, I think there were probably some teams, like, don't get me wrong, like teams do quote hate distractions, even though Deion Sanders hasn't said anything. Like, I wasn't worried about Deion Sanders holding weekly press conferences a la Jerry Jones. Like, I didn't think Deion was ever going to go out that way. The one thing about Deion that you definitely pick up from him, like, despite the flashiness and some of the things that he says, there's an order that Deion believes in when it comes to football. You know, that's why it's funny when you really peel back and you hear some of the things that he says, like the way that he talks about the game, people will be like, oh, that's a boomer right there. I mean, but he believes in discipline, and he's very sort of rigid in that way, where like, I think he would not even want to come into or make a spectacle of himself by like somehow undermining Shedeur's time by maybe making comments or being, you know, public, and like, not at all. You saw Shedeur and Deion had their own moment after the game, which was great, where he hugged him. And then he also told him at the same time, make sure you work on what you did wrong. That's coaching. That's a father, right? So like, any idea that Deion was about to hijack a team, I thought was wildly, wildly overplayed. All right. Mr. Pitts here says, 1-2 will be okay. I hope he makes the best of his QB1 opportunity. Miss Hill, love what you do and always have. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think he's gonna make the best of it. look, I don't know if that translates to wins, but I think he's going to definitely put enough on tape to where Cleveland's probably going to keep him around. I would be surprised if that wasn't the outcome. And, you know, I think the harder decision will have to be made by Cleveland in the offseason, because with these first round picks that they have next year, you know, the quarterback class, there's a lot of people that feels like it'll be another down year for quarterbacks in 26 and in 27. And so it's going to have to, the Browns are going to be forced into a decision about, do we just continue to roll and develop, you know, Shedeur, or do we go out there and get a guy that we feel like can really, really, really be the guy? But either way, I think it means really good things for Shedeur, because if he's able to show that like he could be a competent, qualified starter in this league, it's going to be a lot of teams that's going to be looking in his direction. So I think this means nothing but good things for him, for sure. All right, let me get to some more comments here. See, this is from Mr. Barber Boy 42. The problem was Deion is bigger than some NFL teams, so his son was going to carry things that weren't his fault. So NFL coaches didn't want to sign up for their own fire. Exactly. Like I think there were probably a couple people that thought that way, or they just didn't want. Like if your team's not very good, or if you are in a position where you need a quarterback, and then suddenly all it takes is somebody to go run into Deion Sanders and saying like, hey, what do you think about the position that they have your son in? I understand that. But I think that's also how weak-minded teams think. I'll say that. There's a reason you're losing if you're thinking that way. Let's see. Okay. This is, Jermaine, I already yes, I'm going to move on to somebody else, Jermaine. On jersey sales alone, they should keep Shedeur. So this is part of the reason why it was hard for me to believe in the conspiracy. With a conspiracy being so deep that they just want to run Shedeur out of the league. It's because the NFL, if you can count on them wanting nothing else, they want to make money all the time. And I know many of you brought up the Colin Kaepernick situation. The reason it was so easy for them to blackball Colin the way that they did is because in their mind, they were protecting the bottom line, because you had the president taking off on them all the time. You had white people burning his jersey, burning their Nike, like all sorts of things, right? From a perception standpoint, the NFL felt like they were losing the perception battle, and that was costing them money. Because even though I did not believe the folks who swore they weren't watching the NFL anymore because Colin was in the league, they took that stuff to heart. And so in their mind, it was costing them money. Shedeur Sanders does not cost them money. Shedeur Sanders is great value, because you have a 5th round pick who can sell jerseys like he a 1st round pick. That's an invaluable commodity in the NFL. And so, and even if you're Cleveland, right, where you're trying to keep the fans engaged and give them hope, Shedeur could wind up being one of the best investments you've ever had, because now you have somebody that the fans want to come see at that position. Like, sure, plenty of fans want to come see Myles Garrett and some of the other talented players they have on the team, but you got a quarterback that people want to see, that networks want to see. So be thankful. Be thankful this gift has dropped into your lap, Cleveland. All right. Shedeur, starting over with another questionable quarterback is crazy work. Build up the offense around Shedeur and let them cook. Can't lose with the defense. Okay. So here's my thing. You remember, of course, when the Browns took Baker Mayfield. I think they took on number 1 overall. People killed that and said that was way too high to take Baker Mayfield. Here's why I liked it during that time. I liked it because it showed conviction. See, there were other quarterback choices that the Browns have made, but I'm like, they're not convicted. I feel like they're not committed to this. But that showed conviction. And I was like, it'll work. It'll work because they believe. They think that this is the guy. And sometimes that's half of it. That's more than half of it, because if you believe that that quarterback is your quarterback, you're going to approach how you build around them in a completely different way about somebody you're not that convicted of. So I like the conviction. When you show a lack of conviction is where, to me, you get in trouble. So yeah, if Cleveland decides to start over again at quarterback, it's like, damn, how many more times are you going to do that? So I understand the sentiment, because generally that has not led to positive things, as their track record with quarterbacks has shown. But I would say the same thing about this. If they get to the end of the season, they need to be strongly convicted that Shedeur is their guy. If they're not convicted into that's their guy, then they need to move on. They need to move on and just draft somebody else and move forward with that one. But make a choice and stick with it and just go down with the ship. That's just generally my advice to NFL teams. Because if you start coaching and making moves based off how people might react and, I don't know. So if anybody on the Browns, especially, I would say this is really related to the coaches. See, to me, the biggest issue with Kevin Stefanski, and I know some of you also noticed how he responded in the postgame in their locker room. Many people pointed out, well, one, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't give the game ball to Shedeur, which I thought was weird. I was like, it's the kid's first NFL start. Like, give him the ball. If there was anything that I thought was clearly obvious when it came to Kevin Stefanski, and I've seen this among so many coaches, is that coaches, where their ego gets involved, is like when they make a pick and they decide that a guy is talented, it's like they don't want to be wrong. It's like a woman that sticks in a bad relationship. They don't want to be wrong. So sometimes they wind up staying with somebody much longer than they should have because they just don't want to be wrong. And it was starting to feel that way with Kevin Stefanski and Dillon Gabriel. He just doesn't want to be wrong. That was clearly somebody he wanted, that he thought would be a perfect fit for Cleveland, and now he's wrong. Because there was nothing Dillon Gabriel showed that would have made most of us understand why that dude. Like, why? What did you see? So he just, I don't know that he is able to admit to himself that he might have been wrong. And I have seen so many coaches blow it, get fired, because they don't have the ability to say, I got that one wrong. And it was funny because I was talking about Pete Carroll a moment ago. Pete Carroll, to me, made one of the best coaching decisions I've ever seen. And clearly, I'm not talking about the stupid decision not to run Marshawn Lynch on the 1-yard line in the Super Bowl. Not that decision. The decision he made to get to go with Russell Wilson as the starter of the Seahawks, which obviously was part of a big core piece in how their dynasty started. They signed Matt Flynn to a whole bunch of money. Matt Flynn, who was a backup in Green Bay. And I think when Matt Flynn got in the game, as a backup, he got in, I feel like one of these games was against the Lions. Matt Flynn was out there looking like the second coming of Joe Montana. Everybody was like, Matt Flynn is the dude. And so, of course, Seattle signed him. It made perfect sense. But they also had Russell Westbrook, who, again, was a mid-round pick. Most coaches, because of the money they paid Matt Flynn, would have absolutely rode with Matt Flynn. Again, they would just be like, we paid him the money. We went and got him. He's got to be our guy. Pete Carroll didn't do that. Pete Carroll went with Russell Wilson. And that was a bold and courageous decision. Because if he doesn't go with Russell Wilson and he lets his ego talk him into wanting to be right as opposed to what's best for the team, we might not have ever seen that dominance that Seattle showed for the next 4 or 5 years. So Kevin Stefanski needs to have a talk with himself and let it go. And accept the fact that he might have been wrong about Dillon Gabriel. That doesn't mean he's right about Shedeur, but it does mean he probably wasn't right about that guy, and just let it go. As opposed to costing yourself potentially your own locker room by continuing to stick with somebody that I don't think the rest of the team has a ton of confidence in. And so the 49ers is another great test for Shedeur, because I think if he holds his own, he should have the job the rest of the season. It is what it is. All right, I'm going to get to some more comments here before I get you guys out of here. From Cold Smoke, that's why the NFL doesn't have that many big name coaches in the NFL today. Everyone in college football nowadays. Speaking of big names, this Lane Kiffin situation, y'all gonna have to help me understand this. This man is holding multiple programs hostage. I mean, I think Lane Kiffin is a good coach, but I think if anybody else tries to pull off this whole every night I got to prove my love to you type of scenario that he's doing between Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU, they would get excoriated for doing this. Like, your AD has to announce, like, he'll make a decision soon. Like, what? And this man, I fully predict he's about to get between $13 and $15 million a year at his next stop. Y'all fall for the banana in the tailpipe every time. I mean, God bless him for getting the leverage that he's gotten. But the schools willing to put themselves in this position to get Lane Kiffin tells you everything that you need to know. Tells you everything that you need to know. So, yeah. All right. The Browns are not drafting another QB, and this is from Pittsburgh. In 2026, Kevin Stefanski will be fired or resigned after the season. Well, okay, here's another scenario. What if the Browns, if they wind up having a decent season? I was like, I got to look to see where they are right now, but like, they still got a lot of football left to play. And if Shedeur winds up being that spark plug, I wouldn't exactly be throwing dirt yet on the Kevin Stefanski grave. All right, Big ZD 8725. Antonio Pierce recently said Shedeur was on the top of the Raiders draft board. Owner was totally on board, even brought him in for an interview. So what happened? That would be if the owner's on board, which really that's all that matters, truthfully. He's at the top of the bar. So what happened? That's what I would be curious of. What happened? Look, I just told y'all, stop giving this man a job. I mean, respectfully, Chip Kelly to LSU, that's a no. That's a no right there. And LSU, clearly, they have their sights set on Lane Kiffin. And by the way, if I'm Lane Kiffin, you go to LSU. Don't go to Florida. Go to LSU. LSU is a program where if you just recruit their state, if you just recruit Louisiana, you're going to be in the national championship conversation every year. See, unlike in Florida, where you have to compete against Florida State, Miami, other, obviously, schools that come inside the state to recruit, Georgia, like, you got to compete with everybody for recruits. In Louisiana, and this is what makes the Alabama job so good, recruit the state, you win. LSU, same thing. Recruit the state, you win. So it's just that simple. Yeah, I got it. Pierce got fired, I know. But even if he did get fired, if the owner wanted Shedeur Sanders, then that's really kind of all that matters. But I do understand going with Geno Smith. Geno had a hell of a year. He was like, I truly get why they were looking at Geno Smith's direction. Veteran, season, coming off a great year. It made a lot of sense. And Geno is like young enough where they can look at him as a multi-year solution, not just based off one season. So Geno's availability, I'm sure, has something to do with that. All right. This is from She Loved Me on Payday. He will be a good QB, but he played a terrible team and may get ruined at the Browns. I don't think he'll play as good against good teams. Well, that has more to do than just him. And for as much as people who are riding the high of Shedeur winning his first start this week, I encourage you to bring it back down to earth for next week, because he is going against a better team. And at some point, these rookie mistakes are going to show up. It doesn't mean that he's bad. It just means that he's a rookie, and that's it. So you kind of got to take the good with the bad. It is what it is. All right. Well, listen, I just want to hop on here real quick and get those thoughts off about Shedeur. I thought he was really good. I thought he showed something. He needs to start the rest of the season so they can get a true evaluation of what they have, and or possibly other teams can get a true evaluation, which also could play in the Browns' favor. But either way, he's earned the opportunity at this right to start. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me on this Monday. Make sure you check back here, subscribe, like, do all the things. I appreciate all the support you've shown November has been a huge month on this channel, as was October. I'm riding a really good momentum now, so keep it going. And next time I'll be back here, everybody have to recap their Thanksgiving. Wishing everyone a happy holidays. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday because it's all around food. So my mom gets in today. Her and we're going to go into the lab, also known as the kitchen, because I have officially been passed the crown. So I make the mac and cheese, I make the dressing, I make the greens, I make the black eyed peas, I make the candied yams. The torch is now mine. And my mother told me, I think it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, she told me, I now make the best dressing. My dressing is better than hers. Y'all can't tell me nothing. Holla at your girl. So looking forward to another enjoyable Thanksgiving. You guys have a good one yourselves. I'll be back on here probably not until next week, but y'all keep it locked. Stay with me. I appreciate y'all. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Let's make it through this holiday week. And I hope on Thanksgiving, for those who drink, I hope y'all good and drunk and having fun with the relatives. Stay out of them political conversations. I don't want nobody thrown out the house. And by God, don't be reneging in spades. I don't want to see nobody else put out their own families over reneging in spades. Do not renege. Pay attention to the board. I'll see y'all soon. Be easy.